Hello there. My name is Olatunji Sobodu once again, and this is a special edition of Leadership in 30 Minutes. You know, we always come to you with a special edition. That series we started last month, and in this special edition, we bring very credible leaders um, to discuss leadership within the context of functional areas. These are people with many years of experience. These are people with very deep convictions, motivated by truth. These are leaders indeed that we assure you that you can learn from, and indeed should learn from. And today we have another very important guest. Um, it promises to be a real learning experience today. Every minute you spend, with us today, um, I guarantee that there will be value adding. So, without wasting any more time, let me unveil who we have as a special guest today. And it's my pleasure and privilege to welcome to Leadership in 30 Minutes special edition, the person of Mr. Oluwole Dada. You are welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me.
It's a great pleasure to have you join us this today. Well, it could be any time where different people are watching, but we have with us Mr. Oluwole Dada. Mr. Oluwole Dada is head of sales and marketing at Secure ID Limited, and he will tell us, a bit about Secure ID Limited. I believe at the appropriate time, maybe when he's introducing himself. But I, want to assure you that those is probably the biggest boy in their area, at least as far as Africa is concerned, and so that you would have an appreciation for the kind of responsibility that Mr. Dada is shouldering. And I know that he's doing great in that responsibility, from all indicators. Mr. Dada, you are welcome, sir. You want to, share with our audience who you are, what your background is, and any other thing that you'd like to emphasize about your good self.
One more time, thank you for having me. As you said, my name is Oluwole Dada. I lead the sales and marketing team at Secure ID Limited. That's the largest smart card manufacturing company in Africa, where we produce banking cards. Many of the ATM cards you see in Nigeria are produced in our factory in Lagos, Nigeria. Also, the SIM cards and the government ID cards. My experience in different companies varies from Nestle. Absolutely. Thank you so much. My experience varies across private sector, Nestle, Samsung Mobile, UAC Foods, and one or two other private companies that I have worked with over the years.
Yes, so there you have it. The largest smart card producer, and in Africa, that's no mean feat, by any means. And I can imagine what you must have encountered, handling that relationship. So what we want to do, Mr. Dada is not new to us at Emet Leadership Academy. He has had the privilege of attending some of our programs. We have enjoyed the privilege of having him contribute immensely to what we do. And it's always a great pleasure, to have, to undertake discussions like this with him. But we want to learn from him today because, it's one thing to talk about leadership, it's another thing entirely, to look at leadership within the context of sales. And so I'm going to start, by asking Mr. Dada to share with us some of his leadership journey in the area of sales and marketing.
I would like to start by saying leadership in sales. I've been selling from I'm as far back as 26, 28 years. But when you talk about the leadership aspect of it, um, I will say my experience started with UAC, and it's about managing the sales force of the distributors. As you climb up in the sales cadre, you manage the sales force of the distributors, and then you move to a level where you manage the sales team in the organization. That is when you have the field sales managers, area sales managers, territory sales managers, or as the name may be, reporting to you as a regional sales manager. And then over the years, you now have the old cadre reporting to you because you held the old sales organization of any system.
Okay, so what we understand from you is that there are levels of leadership when it comes
Absolutely.
to the sales and marketing function.
Yes.
So how would you describe when you are leading the sales force, from when you are leading the sales team? I found that quite interesting. The sales force and the sales team, different levels of leadership. So I suppose they must have certain characteristics that differentiate them, and um, what are some of those characteristics, and what counsel would you give people who are leading the sales force? What counsel will you give people who are leading the sales team?
So as a sales, you are managing a sales force. So probably you're an area sales manager, or you're a territory sales manager, or you're a field sales manager, depending on the title your organization uses. The sales force, secondary sales force, as you call it. So in sales, you are what you call the primary sales, for those who are working in the B2C, otherwise called the business to consumer. So you talk about the likes of Nestle, PZ, Friesland Campina, and so on. You have them all over the world. So you have them selling from the company to the distributors. So that is what we call the primary sales, or otherwise called selling in some cases. Now you have the distributors selling to the trade. That is what you call the secondary sales, otherwise called sellout. Now your sellout affects your selling, because if the distributors are unable to sell out, then you will not be able to sell in from the company to the distributor. So the people who work with the distributors, who drive the vans that you see, most of those branded vans that you see around, they work with the distributors. They move goods from the distributors' warehouse to the trade to sell to the retailers, are the ones we call the secondary sales force. More often than not, more often, that does not mean absolutely, they are not the graduates. Many of them may be school start holders. Many of them may be drivers who have a flair for selling. There are people who are not graduates. In Nigerian parlance, you before you can get into many of these organizations, you need to be a graduate. It may not be like that in some countries of the world, but in Nigeria, that's the way it is. So many of those people may have a lower degree or may have a secondary school certificate, but they have a flair for sales. So these are the kind of people that you manage in the secondary sales force cadre. But when you are coming into the organization to talk about the organization, you are having people who are graduates. Some of them they have masters, and they could be field sales manager, territory sales manager, and then they begin to grow in the rank to regional sales manager. I mean, some companies you have divisional sales managers before you now get to a level of the national sales manager.
Okay, so what would you say that the difference? What's the difference between leading, you know, either the sales force or the sales team and leadership, in any other role? Are there any key differences? Is there something that, one needs to be mindful of?
Leadership is about showing the way. Leadership is influencing people. Leadership is showing people the right way to get things done. But before you can lead, you must be an example. There are things that can make you lead people easily. These are your words and your actions. Okay. Now, leading the secondary sales force, there are people who are not as smart as you are. There are people who are not in the cadre of your understanding. So many a times you may need to come to their level so as to lead them well. So if you want to compare, if you want to lead the secondary sales force the same way you will lead people who are working internally, you may not be able to get it right. But first and foremost is to influence them through your actions and through your words. I've seen cases, and perhaps one of those people may be listening now, where my secondary sales force, then I was field sales manager, when we go out together, I help them in carrying the goods to sell. I don't leave them. So this action of mine influences them. I mean, how could you see your boss carrying goods and then you are not motivated to carry it yourself? And then in doing this, I have seen situations where we finish delivering goods to a supermarket and I have to buy some roll-on or body spray for the team members as a sign of appreciation and to tell them, oh, we've all sweated now. So when you get home, put this on yourself. These are signs that helps a leader to gain trust. So another point I would like to make here is that apart from leading people through your words and action, you need to use your words and action to gain the trust of your team members. People cannot follow the man they can't trust. So amongst other things you need to get done as a leader, either you are managing secondary sales force or you are managing the cadre in an organization, either you are the national sales manager, the divisional sales manager, you need to let people trust you. And how can they trust you? They trust you through your words. They trust you through your actions. Are you leading by example? Are you committed to whatever you say? Do you promise 18 and you keep it to that time? Do you tell them 10 a.m. we are starting a meeting and you are there by 10? These are little things that make people to follow you and follow you easily and willingly.
Okay. Let's there are two issues I'd like to take. So you try to explain it, but again, I think maybe for greater clarity, and I love that point that you made, which where you said, you need to come to the level of the people. So for example, you are leading the sales force, they're not as educated, maybe they don't, as we would say, sabi your kind of intelligence and all of that. So how do you practically, bring yourself to the level of the people? And what are the advantages of doing that?
Now, you must be able to speak their language.
So
You
let's
can be,
take let's take that driver for example. I mean, how do you bring yourself to the level of the driver? And here you are, so high up there, so well educated, but this person is not. Maybe all he has is just a school leaving certificate. How do we do that? How does a leader do that?
first is the point, you must be able to speak their language. You can't be speaking big grammars when the person you are speaking to does not understand the intensity of the words you are using. So you must be able to speak in their language. Now you must be ready to be in the environment that they are. I've seen cases, and I've also enjoyed that from one of my bosses. He may also be listening now, where we go to eat in the same place where they eat. They see you, the leader, as one of them. It enables, these are actions that helps you to gain trust. So speak their language and be ready to stay in the same environment as they stay. Be ready to enter the same vehicle. That that 6 tire vehicle, canter. Be ready to enter that vehicle. You don't be in your own Toyota Corolla or your Jeep and you want to follow them to the market. Stay in that vehicle with them. As they go, begin to gist with them, exchange words. It makes them to feel a sense of belonging. More often than not, associates don't have a sense of belonging with their boss. They see the boss very high up there, but many times the boss also forgets that he also grew through the rank like these people. So
Correct.
they see the boss high up there. They are able, they find it difficult to look up the face of their boss. And so it brings a gap between them. So one of the things every leader must ensure in managing a sales team for performance is to close the gap between you and your team members. And how do you get this done? Speak their language, go in the same environment like them, be in the same vehicle with them, go to the market with them, visit the trades together. With this, they will trust you, they will confide in you, they will even tell you things that you may not be aware of, and it will help all of you perform at the optimal level.
Okay, great. How do you, okay, you have this team, and I know that one of the things that, sales teams are noted for is the issue of targets. You almost define daily targets. In fact, if it were possible, you will even define hourly target.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, so and funny, interestingly, I know there was a time many years ago, when I was still in the relationship side of banking, where I think for one of the bureaus, where even the distributors had targets. It was like they had monthly sales targets or something.
Absolutely.
Okay. So you have a team, your sales team, and you have some people that are not doing, pulling their weight, as we call it. How do you address issues like that? What do you do, to address such situations when, as they say, chain is as strong as its weakest link? So how do you address that, especially given the fact that, you guys, you have little tolerance for non-performance, especially when you're operating in a highly competitive, market.
First is to re-emphasize what you have said. Sales is a target-driven career. You pursue targets from day one till the last day that you are retiring.
Mm,
Now, if you have people who are not performing optimally, and I need to mention this as well, we are not gifted equally by God.
mm,
So we cannot deliver results at the same level. That is one thing every leader must understand,
mm,
that in getting things done, my team members cannot deliver results at the same rate. In that case, you may need to give a smaller territory to someone who cannot operate at the optimal level and give the bigger territory. So a territory is contributing like 30% to your overall sales target. You put your best hands there. No, you don't put somebody that you are pushing into that. You can put someone that you are pushing into a 2% contribution territory and watch him grow. Now, in growing, in developing, everybody cannot also grow at the same rate. There are very fast runners and there are slow runners, but everyone has a place. You may put him in that smaller place and then let him continue to grow gradually. and you will ensure that his performance, if even though it may be low, will not affect the overall performance of the team. But in a case where you have tried that for some time and the guy is not still pushing his weight, you may need to coach him, mentor him, and suggest to him to move to another department so that he may find growth in his career. Not everybody can be a salesman, and that is what we must realize as individuals. We are not gifted equally, and that is a reason we will not always do well in a particular career field. So if the guy is not pulling his weight in sales, and you have tried to coach him, you have tried to mentor him, you have done all that you need to do to push him to the next level, and he's not moving, the best thing is to mentor him and let him know that I may be need to move into another department. That department may be a breakthrough for him. It may be supply chain, it may be depending on his background. Some people have moved from sales to accounting. It may be the factory. He may move into the factory. And by moving into the factory, that may be something that may help his career.
Okay, you have thrown up, a number of very important issues. I must say, and you remind me by your response of the parable of the talent. And the parable of the talent, that is a wonderful uh, principle that that helps to appreciate leadership, in my view. Uh, and one of the things you've mentioned now is that, look, we can't all grow at the same time. We are not all equally gifted. But that raises a lot of issues. Um, what if some people believe that, look, we're on the same level? And if we're on the same level, maybe we're even earning the same salary, or ordinarily being on the same grade means we should earn the same salary. But I mean, here you are, I have a bigger target than you have. Can that be justified? Or do we just say, well, it's because, I'm more gifted than you are? If I'm more gifted than you are, how do we compensate for that? How does that
Well,
affect the way a leader manages, people?
thank you. Result is what differentiates people more often than not.
Mm.
So I remember in my days in Nestle, at the time I was managing a region contributing like 2.5%. It was expanded. So as at that time, it was in the southwest Nigeria and just 3 states. And then because of my performance, it was increased to 6 states. And those 6 states were contributing then 5%.
Mm.
And I had the highest growth. My region had the highest growth in the business. Incidentally, I was also with my family, and they decided to move me out of that place to a bigger region. Because I was with my family, there was an hesitation from me.
Yeah.
But the national sales manager said to me, will you prefer to keep staying in a smaller region, or we take you to a bigger region? Now, what am I bringing out of that small story is that my performance on a smaller region kept moving me to a bigger region, and the results kept motivating the leadership to give me bigger responsibilities. So you
That's
may be on
that's
this.
that's in line with the parable still.
Thank
you have
you.
been faithful in little. So
So
come
take
and
more.
manage. Yeah.
So it's not a bad thing to start with a smaller thing, How have you managed the smaller territory that you have been given? So, in a place like Lagos, Nigeria, you were managing a smaller place like Ikorodu, but because you did very well in Ikorodu, you were taken to a place like Ikeja, and you're doing well in a place like Ikeja, made the management, maybe as at that time you were food sales manager, to either take you to a bigger region as a food sales manager or give you a region to manage as a regional sales manager. So people may be saying all manner of things, or we are on the same level, but results is what differentiates each individual at the end of the day.
Okay, I mean, for me, I'd like to argue that it would appear that at times, um, it would appear that at times leaders create problems themselves, or maybe they inherit the problems created by other leaders, which is the fact that ordinarily, I mean, following what you said, you shouldn't have a situation where you have two people who are on the same grade. All right, yes, results matter, but results should matter to the point where you actually differentiate them, where because those grades are meant to project competence, they are meant to project capacity to deliver. So why should we have two people, we say they are managers in the hierarchy of the organization, they are at the same level, but one person is bringing more to the table than the other, significantly more? Isn't Doesn't it suggest that there's a problem somewhere, and shouldn't we correct that problem?
The truth is, life will never be fair. But what do you do with what comes your way is what distinguishes you at the end of the day. I'll give two scenarios. So you're coming into an organization as a food sales manager with your colleagues. For whatever reason, you may have been put in a place of a lower territory output. But and your colleague that you came in at the same time was put in a place that is of a bigger territory and bigger capacity. You are collecting the same salary. But what do you do with what you collected? Is what differentiated you or differentiates you at the end of the day. I mean, this is a practical example at my hand. I mean,
What,
I
so
go on.
what happens? I mean, what if one person? Because if you give me, for example, a responsibility that maybe I'm contributing 25%, and then there's somebody who is collecting the same salary as I'm collecting, we're on the same grade, and he is contributing 5%. I mean, wouldn't I feel demotivated?
So it is led for each individual. You see, again, that's why I said life is not fair. There are different scenarios in life, but what do you do with what comes your way? Is what differentiates you at the end of the day. Now, I'll give you a typical practical example that happened to me. I was promoted to a regional sales manager, and ordinarily, all necessary documents and papers need to have been put in place to ensure that my grading is changed and my salary is changed. Friends, I was on that acting level for 34 months. And I mean 34. Yes, internally there was that demotivation, but I decided to encourage myself. I mean, I know you bring a lot of things from biblical perspective. The Bible says, and David encouraged himself.
In the
So
law.
certain things may not work well with you, but you have to give yourself an internally generated energy. That's the way I call it, IGE.
IGE,
Internally generate. You see, the energy will come from you generating it internally. For
Mm.
your information, I was my colleagues that joined the business 5 years after I joined, who happened to be reporting to me in that role, were collecting the same salary as I was collecting. But I did not allow that to affect me. I know, as at that time, but I did not allow myself to be demotivated to the point that my results will be affected. I kept on
Why?
getting.
Why was that? What was behind that?
You see, they are different. You see, we have systems are
Was that
designed.
was that that is on your part? I mean, you encourage yourself. Why? How did you encourage yourself? Was it because of what you knew? Was it because of faith? Was it because you just believe that things will be corrected, or was it like you decided to take it as a challenge?
So
And therefore you took advantage of what ordinarily would have been a position of disadvantage.
first is the fact that my results will ensure that the right thing is done at the appropriate time. Yes, when I say appropriate time, I was cheated, no doubt, but my results will make a point one day and they will say, no, something is wrong somewhere. In fact, by the time my salary was presented for review with the MD that time, he was shocked. He said, this is the salary of a new entrant. So they needed to do some expedited increase. In fact, there was something that happened that they could not do an increase beyond the particular point per time. So they did that time. They now said at a particular time of the year, they will have to do another increase so as to ensure that I'm brought back to my rightful place. So I knew that results will change the perspective over time. And I also knew that if I allow these things to affect me, there will be a negative impact on my results, which will be against me eventually. From a spiritual perspective as well, the Bible says, he who seeth thee in secret will reward you openly.
Correct.
That is one of my strong words. There are many things we do in secret that our bosses don't know.
Yeah.
The only comfort you can have is that there is a God that sees your effort, sees your private tears, sees your private journeys. I mean, I've gone from Ibadan to Kitikupa and Igbokoda in southwest Nigeria and returned to Ibadan same day. I mean, these are things that your bosses who are in the head office may not know. I mean, head office is in Lagos, Nigeria, but you need to get things done, and only God, who sees those private efforts, can reward you. So those were the things that were encouraging me as I was going on. But you also asked the question, would I like to talk about? You said, what do I think was happening? What caused it? Systems are created by human beings, and human beings are the root of it. Human beings are not perfect. For whatever reasons, human interference in systems could cause a delay and could be responsible for anything that we may experience in our career. So when we see these things, we must know that it's not peculiar. It has happened to some people in the past, it will happen to some people now, and it will happen to some people in the future.
However, that brings me to another issue, which is that I often hear this, that leaders are humans, all right, and that yeah, so they make mistakes, okay, they don't know everything. I hear a lot of that. I personally feel uncomfortable about those statements. You also hear people say that a leader should be vulnerable. Okay. My point is, and to be nice to have your take on this, my point is this, is that a leader should be vulnerable. Everybody is vulnerable to one thing or the other. But the position or the responsibility called leadership does not allow for laxity. Why? Because people are looking up to you. If you are going to be as weak in the face of a challenge as myself, why should I follow you? That's the perspective from which I'm looking. I'm saying yes, it's good for you to be vulnerable because it shows you are human. In fact, let me use the example that you use. David encouraged himself in the Lord. If you remember the instance, he cried his eyes out like all his people. But he had to quickly come to the realization that, okay, if all of us are crying now, who is going to solve the problem at hand? What are we going to do about the problem at hand? So I guess that was part of his motivation. He woke up to the reality that he is the leader and he cannot, wallow in vulnerability. Otherwise, the team is doomed. So why am I bringing that issue up? Is to say that it's admirable what you did in that circumstance. But notice you acknowledged as well that that circumstance you felt cheated, that circumstance ought not to have been allowed to prevail. But not many people would have been as matured, would have had the kind of insight you have. In which case, you were able to use that to your advantage. But it seems to me that that phenomenon itself was still leadership failure.
You are right, and I mean absolutely right. Every leader needs to understand that the lives of people are tied to their actions and inactions. And that is why they must be detailed and not allow any lacuna. They must not allow any room for failure. It's just like a pilot flying a plane. The lives of over 300 people are in your hands.
Correct.
You cannot make a mistake. If you make a mistake, you're all going down. If leaders see themselves like that, I think we'll have a better world. Because if the same way I was doing my own work to ensure that there is no gap and ensure that my region happens to be the best, my territory happens to be the best, is the way the people on the HR side were doing their own, then I wouldn't have been cheated. But somebody somewhere failed. It was the failure of a human being. As much as we call it a system, there's a system in place. I mean, I'm talking about an organization that is in close to 150 countries. I mean, it's a system that works. But a human being is responsible for fixing those things. And that human being went to sleep. And I mean, thank God the plane did not crash. But many times, the actions and inactions of our leaders, either politically, spiritually, or in the secular world, in sales, as we are talking about, can affect the lives of many people. And not only is it affecting the life of your team member, the wife of your team member, the children of your team member, the dependents of your team member are affected by your actions and inactions. So it is time for leaders to understand the weight, the burden on their neck. And if they can understand that, I think perhaps they will sit up.
You brought up yet another very important, aspect. We look at leadership as a relationship, and I think it's particularly is interesting to hear you with your background and with what we're discussing now, the focus on sales and the peculiarity of that function. It's interesting to hear you then talk about these the core responsibility, the nature of the core responsibility of leaders, which is that leadership is about people. The lives of people are being put in your care. And that goes beyond the issue of targets. So how do you balance that? Because not many leaders understand or place that value when in their interactions with their people on their lives. It seems to me not many understand that this interaction that we call leader-follower relationship is about lives. It's not just limited to target. as you said, what you do or fail to do, as the case may be, can define the life, it defines the future of this person, which is far more than just talking about him selling one product or another.
So I will take my brief from my favorite statement that says, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah,
To get the best out of your team members, you must be a carer. If there is, I'm permitted to use it that way.
yeah.
You must care for your team members. You must show them, not only should you care, let them know that you care. In doing this, they will give in their best. They will kill themselves for you. They will go the extra mile for you. I resumed in a new place some years back, and first I told my distributor, I want you to get something for the team members on every case they sell for the secondary sales force this time around. So get something for these team members. For every case they sell, you give them something. And the team members too, I told them, if you recruit this number of outlets, I will give you this amount of money. The feedback from the distributor is that people who used to go home by 12, by 1 p.m. before are now being called on phone by 5 p.m. They are still in the trade, selling, giving in their best. Now, the first thing is there was a show of care from the leader to the team, to the secondary sales force. And the secondary sales force were also ready to give results in return. If you are not caring for your team members, whatever result you are seeing today is below par. You could have seen more if you care. The organizations that are doing well today, but we do far better if there's a care from the team leads. So show to your people that you care about their health, care about their family, care about their lives, care about their academic growth. I resumed in a region some years back, and I asked one of my team members, smart guy. I said, do you have masters? He said, no. I said, I'm registering you for one now. And we called my alma mater, Obafemi University, and said, look, please, I need somebody to come over there. He registered immediately. 2 years after I resumed in that region, he was through with his master's, MBA. This is a guy who today still remains very much in touch with me because of my show of care. So there's a need to care for people, care for their health, care for everything about them. Then they will give in return to you results that will make you their leader shine.
That's very interesting. It reminded me of a case like that also many years ago, um, where I had somebody like that, fairly junior levels, and I had cause to ask him, so what are you planning to do? Because at that time he had OND. And so he told me that he was planning to go, he would have loved to go for HND, but that the hours of work would not allow him. That where he would need to take lectures, they would have closed before he got there and all of that. So I told him no. I said, that's unacceptable. I said, you go and get admission first. When you get admission, let me know. I said, and then I would, we'll figure out what to do. I mean, the rest is history. He got admission. I told him, okay, so you can close at 4 o'clock. Also, I mean, that gives you time to get to that's how I was able to. Just to buttress the point that you made, because I think that's one of the areas where people really miss it. Let me provoke some thoughts from you on a statement you made earlier on. I'm glad I remembered it. Let me come to that. You've said it once or twice, uh, on the program, that life is not fair. And I wonder whether that is the case. you want to you want to shed a bit more light on that because
Okay.
some people will disagree with you that
Well,
life is fair.
the
Why do you think
reality
life is not fair?
the reality many a times is that it doesn't come the way we expect. I'll give you some stories. My mom happens to be a twin. She's late now.
Okay, well,
Our twin sister,
just like mine. So you are not in the you are
I'm
not
not
in that,
alone.
you are not alone in that category.
No,
How we wish they were still around.
our, our twin sister got married 9 years after she got married.
Wow.
Our youngest child happens to be older than the first child, I mean, by some months or some days thereabout, of my mother's twins first child. Now,
So one started 9 years ahead.
I mean, that's life. Now, my parents died when I was young. What's fairness in that? But I said to myself,
But that had nothing to do with you.
I mean, was I the cause?
You were in the cause.
I mean, but I said to myself, I'm not going to be the first orphan. Neither
Mm,
am I going to be the last. Some orphans succeeded before me. Some I will succeed as well. Some are becoming orphans as I speak, and some will become orphans tomorrow. I'll give you the third one. My maternal grandfather lost his own mother 48 hours after he was born.
wow.
He happened to rise to become permanent secretary in the old Oyo state, and he studied in 4 different universities outside this country.
Yeah.
So there are different scenarios in life to show that life is not fair, but life will give you lemon. It is your responsibility to make lemonade out of it.
Okay. Let me come to the point about uh, fairness in the context of leadership, because okay, so let's agree for the moment, although I'll come back to that life is not fair. Can that be a justification for leaders, you know, to have favorites? Is it, is fairness therefore something that leaders need to pursue? After all, they're
You
told
are
life is not
you
fair.
are you are putting me on the spot, but I will try as much as possible to also be fair in my response.
Okay.
Leaders must ensure fairness
Mm,
because the moment a member of the team discovers that there is no fairness in this team, it demotivates him, and he is most likely not to give the best to that team. However, the favoritism aspect you talk about is sometimes generated as a result of the actions and inactions of the team members. So you don't expect a team lead to like the same way somebody performing, growing his territory or growing his region enormously with someone who they are just managing and just putting there. Every time he has excuses for his non-performance. And there is someone who is always the one who rescues the region or who rescues the business. So every month when the business wants to close, its region is always the one they call. Please, we need 3 more trucks. We need 6 more trucks. Can you please help us get distributors that can support us? If you have team members like that, it is normal for the team lead to like the performer more than the non-performer. It's not his fault. It is a function of the input from the team members. So there are several reasons that could be responsible for team leads having favorites. But I am not going to say it is the outcome of the actions and inactions of team members. So I would want people to see it that way. Deliver results, and you will get the attention of your boss.
Okay.
That is the way I would put it.
All right. The so okay. So I mean, does it stand to? Let me maybe help a bit to make a distinction based on the response you just given. So fairness is important, but a leader also must ensure that there is differentiation um, made between the people based on contribution. Otherwise, from what you have said, the way you can discourage or demotivate somebody who feels unfairly treated, you can also, a performer that is treated the same with everybody else will also feel demotivated. That okay, so why am I killing myself?
Contributing this much.
Yeah, when everybody else gets the same thing as I get, everybody else is treated the same way as I get. And so people wonder, so how do you deal with that? And I say, well, differentiation doesn't mean that you are partial. Differentiation is being fair.
Yeah,
So usually the issue is understanding the concept of fairness. That in fact, to give people, to treat people equally will patently be unfair. To treat people equally without regard to the value they are adding or the value, the opportunity they have been given to add value is to be unfair. In the same way, not to give people the opportunity, all right, to take advantage of what the leader has to offer will also be unfair.
you're right. I
So,
agree
so,
absolutely.
so the first one is, from what you are saying, leaders must be fair, is to give everybody an opportunity to add value and to benefit from the leader. But at the same time, you must make sure that as people add value, you differentiate, you treat them in relation to the
Their
value,
contribution.
that they add. And that's important because especially when you look at things in the context of Nigeria, uh, this kind of understanding is important for many of us to have, because we seem to mix up, I don't know how you see it, we seem to mix up that concept, of what is really considered to be fair. What do we really mean when we talk about being fair?
You recall that the parable of the talent,
Yes.
the man that was given one felt to be treated unfairly. So I will say it's a generational issue, an age-long issue, that people will always feel that they are treated unfairly. However, for you to get the best out of life, I mean, as somebody who is operating under a leader now, for
Yeah.
you to get the best out of life, you must optimize whatsoever you have been given. Prove to your leader that this little you have given me, I have given this much in return. And as a result of that, they will give you more. On the other side, the leader also gave the talents in accordance to the abilities of each one.
Mhm.
So those are the things because both sides needs to understand this. The leader needs to understand that you give assignments in accordance with the abilities
So
of
you
the
don't
team
you don't
members.
so you don't ask somebody to do what you know they are not capable of doing.
And this is my
That's
illustration.
that's being
A,
unfair to them.
absolutely, a 1 kilowatt generator cannot deliver 7 kilowatts. No matter how you do it, you will just be pulling the generator. You will be frustrated. The
The
generator
leader will
itself will be
the,
frustrated.
correct. The leader will get frustrated
So
and
that's what,
can damage the generator.
absolutely, absolutely.
Since you are expecting from the generator to perform well beyond the capacity.
So
Yeah.
that is what happens when leaders are also expecting much more than their team members can give. So assignments should be given in accordance to ability. So that's also fairness. And the
Yeah.
people that are also on the other side, that team members, should also understand that whatsoever has been given to me, let me deliver so much and to prove that I'm capable of the next level.
Great. Let me close because I think we need to round up. We can keep going and keep going. It's been very exciting, having you with us today. But I think that we wouldn't. Leadership is a topical issue in Nigeria now, particularly because the president went on a recent trip and he made a declaration and he said, "Look, I mean." Nigeria, where both of us come from, we don't lack a lot of things. We lack one thing. Reminds me of what what Jesus told the rich man. He said, "Look, you lack one thing,
Hmm.
just one thing." So the president says we lack management and leadership. I want to focus on the leadership aspect of it. So what do you think, and what do you think he needs to do, to address that issue, or at least to begin to address that issue? And we just
Yes, we have suffered this much in Nigeria because of lack of leadership. But on the other side, we have had leaders, but the problem is that many of them have been greedy.
so it's bad leadership. I think that's what he meant
So
by bad
perhaps
leadership.
put selfish leadership.
Yeah, selfish
Selfish leadership.
leadership.
The moment our leaders become selfless, a lot of things will turn around.
Yeah,
And
that's good leadership.
I will close with that. The
Okay.
moment our leaders become selfless, they think more about the people than themselves. I mean, they think that the people's salary needs to be paid before theirs is being paid.
Yes.
There'll be a turnaround.
How do your leaders become selfish?
Uh, that may be another day's story because
uh,
it,
because because the reason why I'm raising that is that seems to me that general expectations, everybody wants good leaders, but many times we are not talking about where they are going to come from, um, and we also feel that maybe the the people there will just now one day just change and say, okay, from now on we'll be we will no longer pursue self-interest, we will now pursue the interests of the people, which which will not happen because it's a character issue, and character doesn't change overnight. No matter how much you desire, they don't have the you don't have it, you don't have the capacity to put the interests of people ahead of your own. I mean, it's so how do we address that issue?
I will quote the words of Jesus. He said, "A wise man is he who hears and does."
Yes.
We have an avalanche of programs like this, seminars, churches, enough of that. But it is time for people to do the things they have heard. That's just going to be my simple word. Everybody along the cadre should
Yes.
do what they have heard.
Okay, so let me it seems that you have made the assumption that whatever we hear, we have the power to do. Isn't that a big assumption?
So I don't want to believe that a lot of people don't know what to do. They know, they are just
No,
not doing.
what I'm saying is that there is knowing does not equate to doing, because the Pharisees knew what to do, but they were hypocrites for the reason that they knew what to do, but they never did it. And they always ask others to do those things that they know that they knew to do.
So perhaps we have
Which is
hypocrites.
oh no, I mean, of course, I mean, a lot. I mean, I say it with all, people don't like the word, all right, but that's what it always amounts to. The the greatest issue that Jesus had with leaders of his day was hypocrisy. Was hypocrisy. He said, "You guys know." I mean, he learned from them. By the way, he sat under their tutelage. I normally have leadership in 30 minutes today. So my first session earlier today, I spoke about some things along that line that you can learn from bad leaders. All right. But be careful what to learn from bad leaders. Don't learn from their example, learn from their words. That's why I like the point where you balance the issue of example and you emphasize the words, that examples can be dangerous without words, because you must know why I'm doing what I'm doing for my example to benefit you. Otherwise, you will go and do what I'm doing in the wrong circumstance and it can backfire. So, that's the thing. He said, "You gentlemen, I learned from you. You know what to do. You demand that others should do it, but you never do it." Isn't that what you find with leadership today?
Absolutely.
Which tells us that there is a missing link and there is a knowing and doing gap, which is what you have identified. But the solution to that gap seems to me to be beyond knowing, because there is the capacity. I wanted to reply you with another scripture, in Philippians, that says that, but God
Both to will
works,
and to do.
correct, works in us both to will and to do, meaning that beyond knowledge, there must be the will to
To
do.
do.
And that will must precede doing. Because if the will is not in place, the doing is impossible.
Absolutely.
And there it appears there lies the challenge. You did mention something, and I will just round up and leave you to make the last set of remarks, which is that I'm always struck by a statement that was made in John 1 and verse 12, and it says, to as many as received him, he gave power to become sons of God, even to those who believed on his name. So you said something about leaders earning the trust of their people. And you earn trust when the people believe in you. They must believe in you in order to trust you. And that is where the missing link appears. That first, some leaders don't believe they need to earn your
And
trust.
the trust.
They just believe you need to, submit to them. They are the ones calling the shots, forgetting that you can't demand faith. You can't demand trust. You work to earn it.
To earn it.
And until it is in place, you can't affect the lives of the people.
Yeah.
That's the missing link. You know, he said he gave them power to become. So it takes the power for you to do. That seems to me to be where the issue is.
Yes.
To be where the issue is. Your last comment, and please let people know, how they can reach out to you, how they can contact you, because I'm sure there are people who are, first of all, in the sales and marketing area, and are already in the process of building a career, or are leading either the force or the team, or some people who are aspiring, to build a career and make a name along those lines. You want to, you know, uh,
Thank you.
looking for
Thank you.
mentors, looking for coaches. You want to tell us
Thank you
how they can reach you,
one more
and
time for the
also
opportunity to be a
last set of
blessing
remarks.
to people. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, but more often than not, Twitter and LinkedIn, Oluwole Dada. Once you search that, you can reach out to me. And sincerely, I try to reply every message that comes into my inbox. I try to reply as many as I can reply. In closing, you cannot lead effectively people who don't trust you. So your first rule as a leader is to earn the trust of your team members. Thank you once again.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for honoring us with your presence. I believe it's been a wonderful time. I certainly have had a great time, exploring, learning, and unlearning where necessary, and relearning, as people often say nowadays. And I believe that anyone who is interested in the sales function, and understands the importance of leadership, would have received good guidance, and apart from having the opportunity to follow up with your good self, after now. So thank you very much, sir. We look forward to having you with us sometime. I hope you would oblige. There is always something to talk about,
Thank
leadership.
you so much. Thank you.
um, and the president has said that's what we lack. I believe that by the way, leadership is not just lacking in Nigeria; it's lacking the world over. There is a scarcity of true leaders the world over. So it's not just in Nigeria, but I said on a TV program recently, when discussing the point about the seriousness, um, with which the president talked about the issue of leadership, that the 8-point agenda should now be increased to 9 points, so that
Leadership.
leadership development will be number one,
Mm,
because all the 8 points will depend on leadership.
on leadership.
Yes, all the eight depend. Now that you have identified it, all the eight depends on leadership, and more than that, you are only going to have at the maximum 8 years. All right. Now, if you are so confident in yourself that, well, at least I can provide the leadership, you can only provide the leadership for 8 years.
Mm,
You have 8 years to truly address the leadership development issue, which is what happens after you have left.
yeah.
Good enough, I mean, is a man who did that successfully in Lagos. So that's the hope that one
We
has.
hope to see that at the national level.
Correct, because I think it's not just about having somebody who has an understanding of, leadership as a key input that we're missing. More important perhaps is the fact that the sustainability of whatever is able to put in place rests heavily on continuity,
Yeah.
of leadership. And that's not by perpetuating yourself. That is by
Developing
developing
other
people,
leaders.
yeah, who can continue from where you stopped. Once again, thank you very much, sir. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Bye.
honoring us. God bless you. Real good.
Amen.
All right, sir. All right. So thank you once again. It's been Leadership in 30 Minutes, a special edition, our second special edition. And we have featured Mr. Oluwole Dada. He's the head of sales and marketing of Secure ID Limited, is the largest smart card producer in the whole of Africa. And you have heard what he had to say, looking at leadership from the point of view of the sales and marketing function. We'll come to you on the next edition, a special edition of Leadership in 30 Minutes with yet another guest, and it promises to be value added. God bless you and enjoy the rest of your day and week. Bye bye.